Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Miller, your host. Have you ever wondered what your children are watching you do as far as what you eat, what you drink, and what your habits are? Well, we're going to dive a little bit into one of those that is a across, I think, countries and states. Some drink tea, but a lot drink coffee. And we have our co-founder of Kid Coffee, David Sanborn. He's co-founder with his son, Ethan. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Pam. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to dive into this because I know a lot of us who have raised children or are raising children. I mean, my goodness, we are drinking coffee every morning and they're watching us do that. And, sometimes they want to follow what we do, but um, that's not how this started for you and Ethan, though, is it?
It's not. It's not. Well, I would say, of course, very early on, I am a coffee drinker. I do love coffee. So, of course, my kids would see it, as my sort of daily morning routine. But no, the origin of Kid Coffee is not just a love of coffee for myself or my now 8-year-old son.
Now 8-year-old. He's so young. It's so fun to think about him being a co-founder. Well, tell us how, I think you had told me it's like a series of events in your life that kind of led up to this. Can you take us through the progression?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it is truly, I think, as a kind of multiple time founder entrepreneur. I see businesses all over the place, but the truth is, I think some of the best ideas come together from many different angles, but truly like a product that solves a problem that a lot of people have, and that for the best businesses, or at least from opportunities, is something that people maybe didn't know they have, or it's a sort of new trend, right? So the trend of health and wellness for adults might lead to opportunities for new products to come to market. The reality is, for our family, there was this convergence of many ideas. So again, me being an entrepreneur, kind of at heart, even my sons, and my oldest now 8, my youngest now 3, almost 4. My oldest being interested in entrepreneurship as we started to talk about products and inventing. I don't know if that's a genetic thing that kids might be interested in that, because I don't think he might have grown up when I had a business, but didn't see that daily. But he very early started asking about business and ideas and inventing. But then, on top of that, as a parent, and I'll say I'm a millennial, I think generations determine a lot of new trends, we'll say, potentially, right? That, if anything, generations are actually combined together due to certain traits like that we all have, or that you can kind of bracket, right? Like cell phones when you were in high school, or cell phones when these things like define actually generations. But obviously millennials being more health conscious than like the previous generation. And then obviously millennials becoming parents, which I think has created or it's creating many opportunities. But for us specifically as millennial parents, our oldest now, Ethan, broke his first leg at the age of 6. Jumped in the air at grandma's house, spun around, landed at a weird angle, and just snapped his, I guess, tibia, spiral fracture of his tibia. Nothing crazy, but apparently spiral fracture is pretty common for kids. But it was a year later, 13 months later, riding his bike outside. I'm out of town. I've been out of town for a week. He falls off his bike, breaks his other tibia.
Oh my goodness, David.
Spiral
I
fracture.
had I had 2 girls, and I've heard that boys are easier to raise but harder to keep alive. You're kind of proving that for me right now.
Let's just say that one was crazy because I was out of town for 7 days, I believe. I think I was in China on a trip, and maybe I was in Seattle for that one. Anyway, my wife, the first 3 days, my youngest at the time of 2, 30 stitches across his forehead. 6 days later, my oldest breaks his leg, and in between, my dog spent like 3 days at the vet. So she was, let's just say, yes, you're proving a point right there, because I do have 2 boys. I do have a female dog though, but it was purely a skin problem for her. But yeah, but no, so the convergence of these things. So my son, obviously after the second break, my wife more so than me, but go to an orthopedist, pediatric orthopedist. What is going on? There's got to be a problem, right? He said, probably not. But this is what stuck with me was you should probably look into vitamin D because most kids don't get enough of it anymore. Just a kind of like off the cuff, statement. And well, my wife told me that, but he also prescribed a supplement actually, so 1,000 IU's as a reference dose. And what stuck with me with that was well, first of all, I don't take anything with like direct. I mean, I like that people would tell me, okay, there's something wrong, but I will dig into research. Like I'm not going to take anything just off of somebody's advice, even if it's a doctor, because unfortunately, doctors don't read on all the newest studies that happen. That's just the truth. But so that happened, and long story short, started digging into actual nutrients. So micronutrients that kids get, specifically our son. We're already buying organic foods. We're trying to get him to eat fruits and vegetables. Of course, that's more difficult than it sounds. But what simply happened was I started to add up the micronutrients: calcium, vitamin D, iron, fiber that he was getting in his diet. And he was taking a multivitamin, right? Some gummy. And believe it or not, with all that added up, he still wasn't getting enough vitamin D, but he really wasn't getting enough calcium. And he wasn't getting enough fiber either. And what more concerning was the actual research on what kids need, more so like the fact that it was calling it out, and the fact that we thought we were doing so well. And yet, we come to find out, and this is actually very interesting because pediatricians are not ones to recommend multivitamins for sure. But if we asked our pediatrician, which we did afterwards, do your kids take multivitamins? Yes, of course they do, which is very interesting. So,
well, I think, honestly, in our medical system, we're here in the United States. People are listening to us from all over the world. It may be different in different parts of the world, but I don't know that they can really give specific nutritional advice. I mean, because it's not, medically proven, or there aren't specific clinical trial studies, or there's some kind of line there. And so we are fending for ourselves, right? I mean, you were finding out, and you're an anomaly of a parent that's going to track the micronutrients their child is getting, but you had a reason to. Two broken legs in such a short amount of time for a young growing boy. I mean, you need to figure out what's happening.
Yeah. And I think what you said is really what stand out to me is, if a pediatrician is not going to say it because of the American Pediatric Society or whatever it is, all they'll say is eat a balanced diet. Well, if you're a specific family that manages these things perfectly, and some kids will eat anything, fine, right? But that is the exception, not the rule, right? So in a family with two working parents on the go, sports in the afternoon, like parents are eating, fast food for 4 nights a week, all these things. Now, the reality is, again, you might be buying organic snacks or getting them to eat some fruits and vegetables at times, but that doesn't mean, or you might be getting, whatever, pea pasta as opposed to flour, like whole wheat pasta or a flour pasta. But that doesn't mean when you start to look at micronutrients that they're actually getting what you might think is in some of those foods. And even when the boxes say things like, the one that gets me, huge one with whole grains, is like 25 whole grains will be on a box, flip it over, and there's 2 grams of fiber in it. And you're thinking to yourself, wait, you said 25 whole grains, but there's not actually very much fiber in it. So like, what did I just miss? Again, micronutrients more so than sort of what you think you're actually getting. So but to bring it all back together was, my son did like to taste the coffee at a young age. It was the idea that coffee in milk is like chocolate milk, but without the sugar. Like the most common, like chocolate milk or hot chocolate. And then, so coffee is a flavoring, but also if you look at coffee, again, back to research, lots of antioxidants, things like helping you go to the bathroom. There's actually lots of different things that coffee does for you. Caffeine being an issue though, right? So
for kids,
fortunately for all of us, there is water process decaffeination. There's CO2 decaffeination. You don't have to use chemicals to take the caffeine out of coffee. Like the bad name decaf of like the past, there's a lot of chemicals, or even the current, right? There's a lot of decaf that's going to be chemically processed, and that's scary for some people, right? But there is water process decaffeination is the one that we use. 99.9% of caffeine can be removed. Amazing. And you're left with amazing properties of coffee minus the caffeine. And so anyway, so bringing that all together to a daily drink for my son and now my oldest and now my youngest, with my kind of past venture. I had a pet food topper and supplement company is my previous business. I knew vitamin formulation, like vitamin formulating. So bringing that into a product for my son. And then after the fact, realizing, oh, wow, this is actually something that is very interesting because it's addressing a lot of nutrient concerns with fiber, calcium, iron, vitamin D, all the other vitamins as well. And then also, when I look at from a company or a branding point of view, teaching my kids about how to launch a business or a product, the idea that saying coffee for kids stands out on its own. And so that was just interesting that my son liked the flavor. And as soon as you told some other kids, they were like, I've got to try coffee. I've got to try kid coffee, which when you get that type of reaction, then you get this indication that potentially you're onto something, which, if you see in today's world, the liquid deaths and things like that, that it's kind of that counterintuitive approach that actually can get you a lot further than saying, I made a superfood for kids, which there's, tons of superfoods. So
we do not want to tell them how good it is for them and how much thought you put into the nutritional components that you're putting into kid coffee, because then they do the opposite of that. But you could just, like you're doing, market the positive aspects to the kids and then the nutritional and other benefits to the parents who are also struggling like you were with, again, you're buying good food for your family, but to get your children to eat that food is a whole another step. And mac and cheese doesn't have that many good nutrients in it, right? I mean,
don't tell me that. My youngest loves mac and cheese still. I'm like, okay, here's your kid coffee. Now you can have your bowl of mac and cheese for lunch. But in truth, yeah, unfortunately, it's organic mac and cheese, so maybe it's better than the whatever.
Here in the Southeast United States, we are champions of macaroni and cheese, homemade, just really good. It is comfort food for those of us who are adults and spend any time in the Southeast. For those who are not with us, just to know, mac and cheese is a go-to food for kids and adults alike. But so kid coffee not only tastes good, you've gone with the water process decaffeinization so that you aren't using the chemical processes in there. So that's not a problem. And then you've got all these added nutrients that actually give some great value, and the kids like the taste.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say taste is no small feat there. The idea that some kids already like to taste the coffee, so it what might sound crazy to some parents, it's not the craziest thing. There are coffee milk is a common beverage for children in Latin America, even in Europe. It's been, it's just not that uncommon, actually, especially when you look globally. The reality is in the US, coffee, caffeine are the same thing in one word. Coffee is caffeine. So it kind of throws the idea of this coffee milk. But the reality is what kid coffee is an instant powder that can be mixed into milk. No added sugar, right? So we also took out the sugar, which is the bigger concern, not only like heavily processed ingredients, but the sugar added to like a hot chocolate or even the, sort of pseudo competitor type things like Carnation Instant Breakfast, Ovaltine, Pediasure, like heavily processed, mostly sugar. Yes, they add vitamins, minerals back in, but So the taste though being, if you want to add things, especially more essential nutrients, again, back to that difference between, say, multivitamins, where they've stripped out most of the stuff that tastes bad for a few reasons. I think one, because they taste bad. Things like magnesium taste terrible. It's just not good, especially in any kind of dosage. Iron being a bad taste. If any millennials out there that tried Flintstones or had Flintstones when they were a kid, they did not taste good. There was still iron in those. In today's world, take the iron out because it's a liability and it doesn't taste good in a gummy, right? When you can go grab and eat 15 of them with one hand, that's a liability for companies, but it also doesn't, they can improve the taste. So they can sell you candy that tastes great and just keep the A, B, C, D, and E, right? Vitamins in there. And the other things that are relatively easy to put in, and then fill it with either, sugar or sugar substitute, gummies, different things like that. But what we really focus on is bringing the calcium, the magnesium, the iron, they
Mhm.
don't taste good. So, then through a lot of trial and error, you ask my son, I think the last time I asked him, he said, I think I tried 200 versions. I mean, we definitely went through formulation after formulation to hammer down or to like really nail down a taste that, he enjoys. And a lot of kids enjoy. We have our original, which is sort of like a vanilla coffee, mostly the more stronger coffee flavor, the caramel, which is truly like a caramel flavor, kind of like a caramel latte, or if you get from a Starbucks. And then we have our choco latte instead of a mocha latte. So choco latte being the tastes more like the chocolate milk, right? It's actually what we use instead of using alkalized cocoa, we use the raw cacao version, so it's not roasted. Retain a lot of the antioxidants, polyphenols in there, and then we use the coffee to give that roasted flavor. So it's truly making like bringing those two together that brings the roasted flavor back. And then use vanilla. We do use natural vanilla flavoring instead of a vanilla extract because it is a powder product
Well,
to
I'm
bring
I'm
it all
ready to try
together.
some. I mean, I'm ready to try some. I'm not limited to kids, right? Adults can do it too.
We have a lot of adults that are actually already buying it. We're seeing it in reviews. It's like, review title. Forget the kids. This was for me.
Yeah, forget
Um,
the kid.
yeah, because all of our emails are like, how do your kids like it? How do what is all the, all these things about kids? And yeah, so we're starting to get that feedback, right? It's like, or in the chance that their kids don't like, they thought it was going to be great for their kids. The kids, the coffee flavor threw them off. The mom's like, but I like it. So
Absolutely. Well, and it sounds like, the whole entrepreneurial journey, I think for you, this was a great idea and let's try this, but also your son was interested in, how do I start a business? What do I do here? How do I develop a product? So it was as much a learning adventure as it was maybe we're going to create a real business. I mean, you have to see how that's going to go. And obviously Kid Coffee, that portion of it's going really well. And now maybe there's an opportunity for some adult coffee as well, or some adult flavoring as well, but that'll be down the road. I'm sure we want to establish Kid Coffee first, but it's an exciting proposition. I mean, I'm glad that it's being accepted in the market.
yeah, no, it's great. I mean, and back to the, my sons and entrepreneurship, this might sound weird, but before I had kids, I thought about things that I wanted to teach my kids, like my future kids, right? What would I want to teach them? And it's interesting to me because I went all the way through school, all the way through college, didn't know what I wanted to do. But when I was really young, I sat in our shed in the backyard and I built things
Oh,
like, kind of go figure. I ended up becoming an engineer in college, right? So I have a degree in engineering. But I'm a very hands-on, love to build, tinker, those things. But the reality is you go through all of school and you never have a course on building a business or even like the idea of creating a product until even in engineering school, we had technically 2 semesters afterwards of build a business, right? And that's only because I went to Georgia Tech where it was you'll see some engineering schools do this more, like Stanford, like really push more of innovation entrepreneurship. But the reality is most adults could have gone all the way through college and never taken a single course on marketing or
yeah, I'm
accounting
one.
or how to set up a business. And of course, these things are like that's what business is all about at the end of the day. So how is your education all these super basics and never taking a step up? And I thought about that for my kids from that point of view, the fact that I probably missed out a lot, even though my dad was an entrepreneur as well. So I did learn some things along the way from him. So
Yeah.
that was I mean, this is definitely, my son, he truly is the founder. He wanted to start a lemonade stand. And what we ended up doing, I said, well, Kid Coffee is a concept that you could expand well beyond our corner block right here. And explaining and walking through the process of launching a new business. He was like, no, this is exactly what I want to do. And so, yeah, it is a huge part of our mission. I wish we could lean more into it right now, but the truth is creating content about teaching kids how to start a business is a lot harder than I thought. So
Yes, I imagine that it is, but just take good notes as you go through it. And when he gets a little bit older, he'll be able to tell his own story and those other kids his age. I mean, by the time he's a teenager, he's gonna have a good handle on it and he'll be able to do some outreach and hopefully you will have like click things forward. But I think there's some genetic code here, and the fact that you're instilling in your kids and for our audience, I think this is a great message because there are a lot of entrepreneurs in the food industry. There are a lot of people at home making these great, whatever it might be, this extravagant dish, or maybe they're creating some kind of product with their own milled flour, or I'm just making things up here, but the whole idea that how do you even then reach out from that? Well, there's a process there to get that business started. And I think for the younger people who have parents empower your kids that they can do whatever they want, figure out how to get that done. What is the next step? Like if you don't know, get them connected with somebody that can help them figure out what the next step is, or and in that entrepreneurial journey. Because innovation, I mean, the food industry is ripe for innovation. There's just so many avenues you can go down. And it's exciting to see what the future might hold with all these genius kids like Ethan, who, he's interested and thinking about different things. I think you told me he's always coming up with some ideas. Well, what about this or that? Probably
yeah,
ad nauseum.
we're gonna make a flying car when Kid Coffee is, wherever it is. At some point we're making a flying car, was what he said the other day. And I'm like, well, people are definitely working on that. They have been for 50 years, but we're still working on that one. We'll have to focus at least for a short amount of time, right, on moving the needle with Kid Coffee. But yeah, it's true. A kid. What's interesting, I think, is that adults become more limited in mindset or beliefs over time because people tell them things and they restrict what they think is possible. If you ask when Ethan was 7, when we really were talking about early 7s, a lemonade stand, I was explaining the fact that his market reach wouldn't be or he wouldn't have much of an audience to pitch because not many people drive past our house. And he's only 7. I'd have to stand out there as well with him. So, so then he said, first thing, what if we sit outside school in the morning?
Oh, expand the audience. There you go.
Lots of cars lined up. He immediately came to like, where are there more cars, right? And I said, well, school probably won't let us sit on their property, but it's not a bad idea. That's a great idea, right? How many adults would have thought, you know what, let me sit in the line of carpool and see if the school will let me give away my product. Mm-hmm. They might actually let you do it. But I would say most adults would immediately shut that down in their mind and think, no, there's probably a legality issue, or like they would say, no, you don't ask, you don't know. But I can tell you what, there's 400 parents a day or whatever it is at our school driving through a loop, right? And a 7-year-old thought that was obvious, right? So I think that we still actually have conversations about this because I realize he will say something to me that makes me think differently about the business, the next product, like how, flavors, right? Like flavor types. So he's like, this would have I tried this like ice cream and it had this other flavor in it. Can we put this in Kid Coffee? And I thought, I never would have thought cookies and cream Kid Coffee was a thing, but
sounds
things
good
like
to me.
that. So, yeah.
I'm ready to go. What are those other kid flavors that we need to explore? But you're absolutely right. Just having the idea generating and not shutting it down, that free thinking idea where you get all the ideas out and then you go through and evaluate each one for all the parameters, the reality of it, or what execution would be like, or if you could even do it and how that might look. But it sounds like Kid Coffee is well on its way. What else would you like to share with us about your project or what you're doing with Ethan or the future of Kid Coffee?
Yeah, I mean, I think from our point of view, we really want to make a difference. I mean, there's every company, I feel like every startup maybe is, we're going to change the world or something. The truth is there's I would say a big problem in our country, and it's not, people know this, right? The fact that, sugar, too much sugar, of course, it's good to have a treat every once in a while, but when you walk the grocery store, you walk the sections, you start picking up, products, you read the ingredients, which younger consumers are doing, older consumers are doing it now too, right? There is, as you mentioned, ripe for innovation. There's so many things that we can do that over time have, the foods have gotten, more filled with sugar and different types of fats and different things that, we probably are pretty convinced there's big issues with now. I don't want to go into all of them, right? But sugar alone, we know that like you can't eat too much of it, right? Type 2 diabetes is running rampant, and there's something that we have to do. And you have to start with kids, because adults pretty much, they're set in their ways, I would say. I mean, not much is going to change for the most part, right? If once you're kind of on the way, but I do think your kids, you can have these conversations and really set them on a better path. And of course, there have to be the products available, right? And cost effective, or acceptable, right? That's maybe the biggest concern, is that it's so cheap to put sugar in stuff. So when you look at across income levels, sure, it's easy for, wealthy people to be like, oh, let's just eat organic fruits and vegetables, or look, I get stuff from my local farmer. I get stuff shipped into in a box that's all special from some special place. But if you look at the average person walking into a grocery store, how do you actually create products that, aren't killing them literally, even though they don't know it? And yes, they still have to taste good, but that's what innovation is. Like we have several challenges to address, and we're getting there. And I think Kid Coffee is just one small step into that space. And there's certainly a spot that we see on shelf that's just really lacking. And we think that we have a great opportunity there. But there's so many other places, right, in the store. And especially when you start to talk about, again, kids nutrition ages, let's say 4 to 12, or even 4 to 16, they typically eat adult food. So those adult foods, they're terrible for probably adults, or even worse for kids, because they don't actually have the essentials that kids need, right, which are different than adults. And so, yeah, I mean, I just think that there's a huge opportunity. If anything, I certainly hope that more people across the industry, push harder and harder to, if it is truly like disrupting the current status quo, but like it has to be done for our children, to just for that simple fact. So.
Yeah, and I think your points are well taken. We want those young entrepreneurs out there, or the parents of the young entrepreneurs that are watching us on YouTube or listening to us on the podcast channels, to take action on some of their great ideas that they have. For example, you were talking about cost. Well, and there's a trade-off. Like there's other processes for decaffeination of the coffee that you could use that I know are less expensive than what you're doing. But what you're doing is better for the kids. So you're weighing that nutritional benefit, or not adding chemicals to the process for what you want to have in your end product, and that's your value system for Kid Coffee. So it's kind of like in your marketing, what you're going to get when you buy your Kid Coffee, because you've got it all laid out there for them. So same idea. I hope we're inspiring to some other maybe budding entrepreneurs out there that have some great ideas in the food space. And I wish you the best of luck moving forward, you and Ethan, with Kid Coffee, David.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us. And audience, thanks for listening and watching on YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a comment. We answer everyone. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Pam Miller.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.